people ask me, like, what are the main things to take away from the book? And I always say, okay, there's a thin line between justice and revenge, but also beware of large groups of like-minded individuals, particularly ones that you meet online.
Welcome to Book Reporter Talks to You, where my guest today is Alison Gaylin, and we're going to be talking about her latest novel, The Collective, which had me on the edge of my seat as I read it, and right to the very last page. Megan Abbott, the best-selling author of The Turnout, said this about it: "The Collective is an astonishing feat. In the tradition of Ira Levin's unforgettable social thrillers, Rosemary's Baby, Stepford Wives, it's a nerve-shredding, emotionally harrowing ride that also speaks volumes about our current moment, the dangers of our digital world, the potency of female rage." And on that note, welcome, Alison.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So let's start out by you telling us about The Collective, because I'm not going to even attempt to do this. So you're on.
Okay, great. I know it's difficult to describe The Collective without giving spoilers, but I'm going to do my best. As mentioned in that amazing blurb, which I'm so grateful to Megan Abbott for, it's about female rage. It's about the thin line between justice and vigilantism. It's about the thirst for revenge, especially when it comes to our children being wronged or worse. It focuses on Camille, who is the sort of narrator, who lost her only daughter 5 years ago at the hands of a very privileged frat boy. He evaded justice because his family was wealthy enough to afford the absolute best lawyers, and he went on to live his best life, while Camille remains a shell of a person. Mm-hmm. She meets, through a series of events, she meets a secret group of women online, all grieving mothers, all who have lost their children to people who went unpunished for one reason or another, and all who are thirsting for revenge. And I think that's probably all I can reveal without giving spoilers.
Exactly, but that's a really, really good synopsis. So my first question is, where was the inspiration for this plot? Like, where, there's always a kernel of the idea. Where was the kernel that you wrapped it around?
Well, as a mother myself, there's been so many stories in the news and so many just different situations where, young people or just people in general have been lost, have been killed, have been victims of hit and runs or drunk drivers or shootings or whatever, and the perpetrators have gone unpunished. And being a mother myself, I always sort of put myself in the position of the parents when there's a school shooting, anything like that. And so I kind of took my mind to the darkest places it could possibly go. And that was kind of the kernel for the book. I mean, I don't know if I could emotionally or even physically survive something like that happening. My heart goes out to every parent who has suffered a situation like this. And then I just started thinking, well, there are so many, and what if it's so easy to meet groups of people online who are angry about the same type of thing you are, and how that rage can kind of feed on each other and become worse and worse to the point of where it gets distorted. And that was basically the seed of the book.
Yeah, because the book is looking at the collision of grief, obsession, and rage. It's all things. It's like they're grieving, they're obsessed with what's happening, and they're raging. When you were writing, were you trying to balance those three things? Because I feel like it's a delicate dance. You've got to hear the sorrow, you've got to hear where they're coming from, and then what are they thinking of what to do? And it's a game.
Yeah, I mean, one of the rules in this collective is the words "move on" are not allowed. No moving on. No. And there is a reason why we do try to move on after tragedy, and why we want people to move on after tragedy. But in this group of people, It is this grief, obsession, and rage. And interesting that you mentioned those three qualities, because I think psychological suspense, if you're writing psychological suspense, which is what I write, those are really the three emotions you're going to play with the most, in different ratios.
Yeah. And it's like Camille is seeing that these women are feeling the same way, or they lost their child or decades before. And what she's seeing, it's not just fresh grief. It's grief that's harbored over a long time. Did you do a lot of research into what it was like to lose a child and what these people would feel like losing a child, a crime? Because it's very different than losing a child. It's losing a child for somebody else doing something to them.
Yeah, well, I read a lot of news accounts of that type of a situation, and I've long been sort of fascinated by these stories because they're so absolutely heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And it's so amazing to me that you're expected to just survive and move on after something like that. So that's, I did a lot of, but keeping in mind that this is a very specific person, Camille, and she's different from a lot of the parents out there that in real life, because she's the main character in a psychological thriller. So she's purely, absolutely fictional. But I did read a lot of these accounts, and I've long been fascinated by true crime stories, and that's always sort of informed my work in one way or another, just because it's just an interest of mine, and the justice system is interesting to me. So yeah, and I did speak to some lawyer friends of mine just to kind of get little more of an inside view into the justice system, since I'm not a lawyer myself. So so that was basically the types of research that I did.
What can happen and what can't happen.
Mm-hmm.
Close to the start of the book, a woman comes up to Camille and says, "I know who you are. I know how you feel." And I know who you are. I know how you feel. That's a big thing to come up and say to Bunny. And she feels a kinship with these people, and it's something she needs. Was it easy to situate Camille? Because I felt like we got right into who she is, her vulnerability, and how she really has not moved on. She's not ready to move on. She'd like to in some ways, but there's something holding her back. And these women captivate exactly that string that's still out there.
Yes, Camille is very much alone in this world because she cannot move on. And, she's the whole rest of the world, including her ex-husband, the father of her child, has moved on in his own way. So in a way, it's not easy to introduce a character like that, but she's very, very single-minded. So it was easy to sort of jump right into the action as far as introducing the character. There's really only one thing that's on her mind at all times, which is her rage at this boy that she sees as responsible for her daughter's death. So it starts out with an incident where she just makes a scene in public, where at an event where he's being honored with a humanitarian award of all things. And that's when the woman comes up to her at a point in that evening and says, "I know who you are and I know how you feel." And I think "I know how you feel" is probably not something that Camille hears very often, especially now, especially after everything she's been through. So that kind of draws her in immediately, that there's actually people out there that know how she feels and aren't telling her to feel a different way than the way she feels. So yeah.
And it's acceptable to feel that way. It's okay to be doing that. So let's talk about the dark web and what drew you to write about there, because these people are having these interactions. This is not something you'd normally find online. This is something that's deep. And I actually learned a little bit about the dark web in Lisa Unger's recent book, where she was talking about the same thing of going out to tour and figuring out this. So tell us about it, because I'm actually fascinated by this other web.
Yes, it's interesting. Well, to do my research for that, there's a security expert, a former police officer, security expert named Josh Mullen, who I think that's how I pronounce it. We're all talking about how to pronounce people's names because I've only corresponded with him online, but he's always my source. I write a lot about the web. I write a lot about sort of techie types of things. And so I'm able to find out information from Josh, and he explains it in a way to me as an idiot that I could understand. So I'm always grateful to him. He's always in my acknowledgments. So he definitely helped with that. I read about the dark web. I've never been on the dark web because I don't want to get my computer infected.
Okay. I was really curious. Like, does she have an encrypted server now? Like, what's sitting over in the corner of her house?
Yeah, I didn't get an unencrypted server. I didn't download Tor or anything like that. But one thing that I did do, sort of in doing research on these groups of people that get together on, whether it's the dark web or the regular web, there are these message boards like 4chan and 8chan, and you can access them, and it's really terrifying, the amount of hatred that is expressed, and everybody fueling each other and getting worse and almost trying to outdo each other because, there are no boundaries, there's no filter. So in terms of these women communicating each other about their grief and what they want to happen to these perpetrators, I did do a little research by looking at some of these message boards. But as far as going on to the actual dark web, the great thing about writing about the dark web is that nobody's going to call you up and be like, hey, I'm a hitman and you don't have the dark web right at all. It's not like people owning guns and you're right about that. So I did enough research where I know what it is and I know what types of technologies are available. There is, disappearing text and things like that are used in the book, and I was able to find out about that. But I didn't actually take a trip onto the
actually dally out there and say, let's see how those serial killers are working today. Let's see what's going on over there.
Let's see what types of strange substances I can purchase. And,
who's excited that Dexter's coming back? Let's go see.
Exactly.
There. So I love it as Camille's carrying out what seems like these innocuous tasks. It seems like it's not a big deal. She somewhat wonders about the things that she's buying really means. And she's given these assignments, like you're going to go to a store, you're going to buy a baseball cap, you're going to buy gloves. She touches each item and she wonders how it plays into the bigger picture. And she's not sure if she wants to know the bigger picture, like how big is her role in this? Did you plot these stakes out really carefully, or do they come kind of naturally as writing? Because she's got these things and later on, it's not what you think is what happened. And you're like, whoa, that's not what I thought the hat and everything was going to be. We can't give anything away, but readers, you'll get it later.
Yeah. I did plot those out pretty carefully. And I was just sort of thinking, it's funny because my film agent, when I got a new film agent right before this book, and it's actually been optioned for TV, very exciting. But when he read it, he said, "You're a really scary person because this stuff is really possible. Like this could happen." So I was just really trying to do it in a way where, obviously, I don't want to give away too much, but like I wanted it to all work out in a way that it could feasibly lead towards something. But just in terms of doing these tasks, particularly at the beginning, Camille thinks it's, that it's a role play. Mm-hmm. And in buying, a baseball cap or whatever it is she buys, and she doesn't quite know what she's doing, but she feels kind of part of a whole, so that she's sort of acting out something with these other people. And it gives her a sense of purpose that she says that she really hasn't had since she was a mother. So she misses having a kind of responsibility and having a sort of job to do that's bigger than herself, which is sort of the way she saw being a mother. And now it's being a part of this group, whatever the group may be doing.
Whatever this group is up to,
Yes.
Which leads me into, she realizes that, and I love this quote, in order to buy into any thrill ride, you have to feel like you are risking something to be there. And it's such a great line because it is. If you're getting a thrill ride, like you're looking at the roller coaster, you're going to have to buy in that you're going to be upside down at some point, or you have to buy into something may happen while you're up there and you're going to be okay with it. And so let's talk about like what she says. She's realized she's risking something, but she sort of has a lot that she could risk because she lost the thing that matters the most.
Yes.
Right on?
Yes, exactly. She really feels like she has nothing to lose. I mean, she's barely hanging on to being alive. It's like yes. And so that's the other sort of thing that this group gives her, is the idea that wow, I am risking something. There is something on the line here. I thought there was nothing more in my life that I could risk or that I would view as a risk. But somehow through this group that again, first she sees as sort of an elaborate role play, she feels like it, right. She's about to go on the ride. She sees what the risk is, the anticipation of that risk, all of that stuff sort of plays into it. So yeah.
And she's sitting and she's living alone. She's living in the middle of nowhere. She's so set up to be like taken. She's so set up to be like seduced to do something else.
Yes.
And there's this feeling that those who harm their children need to be punished. And it's like a chorus that I feel is underpinning the entire book. It's like, must be punished, must be punished. And it's this swell of ominous voices that swelled at many points. They just keep coming up. Were you careful? And I keep asking about ramping up the tension. And I guess I'm feeling like when you first wrote the story, was it all there? Or did you bang it out and then go pace, pace, pace? How do we do it?
Yeah, my first drafts are always like the pacing's never right. They're always terrible. So what I wanted to do was just sort of get through the story, and then I always do so much rewriting on my second draft. And even in the copy edit, I think I drive everybody crazy because I
You're
have
that
like,
author.
yes, I know, even on the first galley, I was like, oh my God, there's a whole big chunk of dialogue missing. And this character just appears out of nowhere because I did so much rewriting in the copy edit so yes, I don't worry too much about pacing in my first draft because that will just completely paralyze me. I just need to get that whole chunk out and tell the story. And then I go back over it and I do a lot of cutting, but I also do some adding, in the second, in the rewrite to make things make more sense or to maybe draw out certain scenes that I feel like I rushed through in the first draft. So yeah, the pacing, all of that, and that was all sort of kind of refined in the second draft.
And we were sitting there and going, and in this book, secrecy is something that needs to be abided at all costs. And I love that, at all costs, you must not tell. And I get the feeling that somewhere along the way, Camille starts to worry about what the price of the secrecy is. Like, what am I giving up? And if you can't question, how can you have all the answers? If you can't say, why am I doing this? And you're really not supposed to question. So I feel like when you put her there, she's in this really tough spot. Am I right that all of a sudden she wants to question and she's told, just do like, go buy the hat, go buy the glove?
Yeah, absolutely. It's, there's, I think there's a line in the book too, there's safety in numbers, but there is also power and there's danger. And, that the collective operates on a lot of the same principles as a military might work on. I mean, if you questioned everything that you were doing, if you were part of the military, that might, lead to some problems or any group effort. For that is powerful and that is doing something that's,
right and
potentially
good.
dangerous.
Yeah.
You can't question it. There are going to be differing opinions in any group, and in something like this, where it's a very single-minded goal that they have, you can't question it. There's also complete anonymity in this dark web group. They're all numbers. No one ever knows who they are or what their name is. But they
I was actually thinking about the numbers. Did you ever think about using names instead of numbers? Like, because I really love that it's these 4-digit numbers, but did you ever think about calling people, because, so much online is make up your handle. And here I feel like you even strip that away from the person. You're getting a number and it's assigned to you. And that's going to be the way the number is. It's not like you can change it. It's not like it's going to be something you remember. This is what it is.
Exactly. I mean, it's just how you're known. And, it's harder to remember a group of numbers too. So it's not like, oh, that's Carol, whatever, you know what I mean? So it's a lot harder. And yeah, it's just the idea of it is complete anonymity, except for they all know the most tragic occurrence in each other's lives. So it's this sort of weird dichotomy. So it's, somebody is 0213, but you know that their only child was killed in a hit and run by a drunk driver who turned out to be rich and went on whatever, but you don't know when it happened either, because that's not important. It's just the fact that it happened.
Happened.
So, yeah.
And they're across the country there. And what she's finding is it's not just in her area. It's everybody is every place. And they're mourning things that happened 10 years ago as she's doing research, as she's trying to figure out who these people are from the scant things that she can take away from them. And I found that was really interesting too, because you always think of it's just proximity to me. And then she's like, wait a second, this woman, it was California, it was 10 years ago. This is what happened. And she's still, and I think that's building up a lot of the emotion that's inside the book as well. So
yeah, I think there's the idea of when something like that happens, when a tragedy happens, that the time period isn't really, when it happened isn't really important. The grief is always still fresh, and it's interesting, like, when my father passed away, one of my cousins, he was one of my dad's first cousins. And I was, of course, devastated. Everybody is when you lose somebody you love like that. And he said, it's like sticking a pin in your finger. And if you stare at it, it's excruciating. But if you look away from it, you can kind of go on, you don't think about it. But then the minute you look at it, it hurts just as much as ever. So this is a group of people that are staring at that pin, and they have been staring at it for 10, 20, 30 years, 40 years. A lot of these women are older women that this happened to, 40 years ago. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter when it happened. It's just that it happened to them, because it's defined them,
And it's actually festering, because the longer it takes, the more it magnifies. I felt what it was like, the way they were feeling as well. We do have a little bit of levity here, because we've got the show The Bachelor playing into the story, which comes in as some comic relief, the rose, blah, blah, blah. So tell me, where did that come from? Are you a huge fan of the show that let me get The Bachelor there? Or
yes, I'm going to come clean with you, Carol. I am.
There we go.
I'm a huge reality TV fan, and I do watch every season of The Bachelor, Bachelor in Paradise. I have some good, my best friends up here. We get together and watch it. I can't get my husband to watch it with me, but my daughter is a huge fan. We watch it. And the interesting thing about when I initially did that scene, there's a scene that takes place at a bachelor watch party, which is a weird thing to happen in a psychological thriller, but there you go. And the scene was put there for a specific reason. It's part of an assignment. It turns out to place these characters in, but I'd initially had it, I was going to have a sports game playing and have it be at a sports bar. And I'm like, I'm not much of a sports fan, but I think, how about a bachelor watch party? How about that? So I did. And the interesting thing about it is it's a very specific season of The Bachelor. And it was January, February of 2020. So right before the pandemic hit, that's when it takes place. So the thing I was able to accomplish by literally saying exactly what was going on screen in The Bachelor at the time is I was able to place it in a time period, so you would sort of know when it took place.
You got to get a link to that episode up on social media and go, okay, everybody, this is the one. In a couple of weeks, after people have read the book, going, okay, let's watch this scene together. This is what we're talking about.
Everybody gets us mad about it, as people at the watch party do.
Well, from what I know about it, I feel like it's another way of showing people have no idea what's truthful and an illusion. Because when you're watching The Bachelor, it's completely scripted. My husband and son were in a pizza place in town here one day, and they were shooting a reality show. And my husband goes, "There's nothing real about the show." He goes, "They did 10 takes." He goes, so they kept saying the same thing over and over. And he said there wasn't one natural moment. And I was laughing so hard, and they couldn't leave because they were in the original scene. So and he says, "We're finished with dinner. We have to still keep sitting there because they can't get their lines right." So I felt like that was the perfect thing to have there of what's real and what's an illusion. You really don't know, everybody,
Right. Absolutely. It's so true. What is reality?
Yeah, maybe they'll get married or not,
Yes.
There's talk of evil of others that makes so many monsters. And I love this reference. It was Godzilla, King Kong, and Frankenstein. And they get to become who they are because of others, of what has happened to them, what's happened to their family. Confess, I don't spend a lot of time thinking about these things, but when I sat there, I was like, wow, this is really a big moment. Are you a fan of monsters? Did you give thought to that before you started writing the book? Because it's true, a lot of who these people become is where they were in life. You know, Batman, Robin, all these things from my youth.
Yeah. Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, I actually find those monsters really fascinating. I'd also initially included Baby Jane and whatever happened to Baby Jane. But my editors were thinking that was maybe a little too obscure. So I didn't. But I mean, if you look at the story of Baby Jane, spoiler alert, there's a reason why she is what she is, and it has very much to do with her sister, who's very much to blame for it, even though, so, but with those monsters, yeah, like King Kong, Frankenstein, Godzilla, they're all sort of made into monsters by mankind, by cruelty, right? So I think there's a big question in the book of, are these mothers, or are these monsters, are these women monsters? And it's like, and I think their feeling is, yeah, hell yeah, we're monsters, and we're proud to be monsters, because we've been, we've had so much cruelty inflicted on us, and we've emerged from it tougher and stronger and more frightening than ever.
Yeah.
Is that the right way to be? I don't know, but it's definitely something that I thought a lot about. So
yeah, and Camille struggles to decide if these women are avenging angels or monsters. And it was interesting to see you writing the dichotomy between the two, because like, who are they? And I think she's constantly questioning. Some of these women are not questioning at all. Like some of these women are just marching to the drum of what we're going to do, but she definitely is. So the hunted and the prey are at the heart here, because originally their children were the hunted, they were the prey. And now who's going on, and who's hunting who, and how are we hunting? Are we hunting on behalf of the victims, or have we really gotten out of control of who we're going after? And I think that there's something that when a mob gets together or a group gets together that makes things acceptable, like it's all now acceptable. At what point does it not become acceptable? And I think that that's what you're showing in the book is you want to avenge, but at what cost and where? Am I on the right track?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's like, people ask me like, what are the main things to take away from the book? And I always say, okay, there's a thin line between justice and revenge, but also beware of large groups of like-minded individuals, particularly ones that you meet online. It's, I mean, whatever group you belong to, I mean, if you're talking about knitting, then knitting, but gets this insane amount of importance if you're in a group that discusses knitting. It's, it's irrationally, becomes irrationally huge, but yeah, I mean, which is completely harmless. Knitting's great, if you're talking about vengeance, same thing. If you're talking about a, political opinion, same thing. If you're in a group full of people who all feel the same way, and you have absolute freedom to say whatever the heck you want to, then that feeling escalates and morphs into something bigger than the sum of its parts.
I mean, and even I am a knitter, so I know exactly what you mean. If you're already talking about something, it's all of a sudden that becomes the most important thing for people to be talking about. You know what I mean? It's and whatever you're doing, and you may be making one thing, and it's an easy way for our readers to understand, because not everybody's going to be on a mass murderer site or like a group of women. I mean,
hopefully not.
No, that's not what's happening. But you get there, and all of a sudden you feel like you haven't done enough, like you haven't knit enough, or you haven't tried this, or you haven't done this stitch, or you haven't done anything. And there's so many times that it's not relaxing, because the stakes keep getting amped. So if you're in a place like she is, where everybody's coded by numbers, and you're learning what happened to them, it's amping up this totally crazy emotion kind of thing. Forget drop stitches. It's a totally different thing. And I feel it's though the same way, if there's anything that you're involved in, how deep you can get involved sometimes and just go, wait, what, did we just lose our way? Like, where are we?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's definitely a theme in the book. And a lot of it is just the sheer, number of, it's the echo chamber effect, really.
Yeah. When we first started out, we had, we were on AOL, that's how long, 25 years ago. And there were message boards and chat rooms. And we actually had moderators on all of those. And it really surprises me at how much is unmoderated today. It really, truly does. Where these arguments are going, like you say something about a book and all of a sudden it's a political discussion and all of a sudden it's this and everybody's fighting. And if you were to see those same people in person, you would never say that. And what I'm sitting there thinking is, these mothers, would they actually say, I want to kill him in person to these other women even? Probably not.
No.
But the way that you can just be anonymous and just be, let's let it rip.
Yes, it's the same thing as on a lot of the message boards. I mean, a lot of these people might be just lovely in their day-to-day goings on, but then get them on a board where there's some anonymity and a whole bunch of people who feel the same way. And the stuff that comes out of their mouths or keyboards, I guess, is really pretty horrifying. I mean, it is.
It just keeps it
unfiltered.
Yeah, completely unshocking, completely shocking. At any point, did you actually scare yourself when you were writing this book? Because I know I was scared.
Yes, I did. And I've never felt that way when I wrote it. I think it's my scariest book. I really do. I scared myself. Yeah. I really did, which is, it's weird. I've heard other writers say that and I'm like, oh yeah, right. Whatever. But I did.
No, there were a couple of points where I'm like, whoa, this is going south really fast. I mean, writing this one, okay, I think I need to go see Sunlight and puppies or something like that, because this is really, really dark of what's going on. So
yeah, there's certain scenes in the book that it's that type of horror. It's not a horror book. It's, it's a thriller, suspense, but it's that type of scary thing that's, oh my God, I'm capable of, to imagine that you're this character and this character finds out that they're capable of kind of evil acts. Actually, it's like that kind of.
Yeah. And and you see how the event is unfolding and you're like, wait a second, that could actually happen to somebody. Yeah. And sometimes she's doing something and she doesn't realize what the ramifications of it are going to be later on. And she's like, whoa, I just put that whole thing into play. I ran that game from the back. I'm not the person up front, but I ran that game from the back and now I see the consequences. And that's not, a couple of times it happens in the book, it's not the person you thought it was going to be, it's somebody else. And you're like, how'd that happen?
Exactly.
So Niobe, I think I've got that name, as a character in Greek mythology. Did you come across her as you were doing research, or did you know about her?
I kind of knew the story, but I wasn't sure on the specifics. I knew she was somebody who lost her children, but I didn't know I couldn't remember the entire Greek myth. So I looked it up, and there's a lot of sort of Greek drama themes kind of running through, because it just kind of works in terms of this type of book. There's a quote from Medea at the beginning, and then, but yeah, Niobe, I did some research and so I was able to get the myth down. Yeah.
I'm glad you just didn't remember it from college, because I would have felt really badly if I
God, there's so many things I remember from college.
It's like, yeah, I don't remember. I mean, sometimes I'm sitting there going, what was I doing in school all that time? Because it's an awful lot of classes, and people are like, right now they're quoting from all these people that I know I read in class. And I'm like, what was I doing?
Right. Oh, exactly.
Thinking about some other journalism thing I was going to do, clearly not old English, So the ending is one I did not see coming. And did you know the ending before the start? Because that last couple of pages, and no one read ahead. You are not allowed to read ahead in this book, because the ending is so cool, what ends up happening that you didn't see. So did you know it ahead?
Yes, I did know the ending ahead. Some of the reason for the ending happening, I realized I needed to seed in a bit more in the second draft, but yes, I did know kind of how it had to end. And I was I knew it would be like kind of a controversial ending, but I was ready to fight for it if I had to. Fortunately, I didn't have to fight for it. So.
It would have been worth fighting for, because it's so clever. It's just not what you think. It's not what you think, So this is book number what for you? I couldn't figure out what number are you up to now?
This is my 12th book. And that includes a YA that I wrote a while ago, but yes, this is my 12th book.
So does the writing process get any easier? I know you do the messy first draft.
Yeah.
When you're writing the first draft now, or getting an idea, do you know that I can do this? Does that help? Or does it still sit there and go, I don't know if I can do this?
Yeah, well, yeah, no, I mean, I want to say it, yeah, it gets you. No, I do. I always go through this, always, every book. This is the worst piece of crap anybody on the planet has ever written. This is embarrassing. I'm horrified with my, yeah, I go through all that, just agony. And then, but compared to the agony one feels when one doesn't have a story at all to tell, it's not as bad. That's what I always think. It's a little easier in that I know I can do it. And if you think, well, if I write 3 pages a day, I can get a book done in 3 months. I can get a terrible first draft done in 3 months. But no, I always go through that period of like, what was I thinking? This is terrible. Yeah, always.
Yeah.
I wish that got easier.
Yeah, the right breath. And okay, so what about if you don't have an idea? Like, okay, you finished writing the book. Do you always have to have the next idea right away? Like, even if it's a bad one that you can throw out later on, just something so that you feel like you're bridging to the next book instead of, I got nothing.
Yeah.
I just got nothing.
Yes, I always try and come up with an idea right after I finish, like, probably my revisions, at least by then, there's like something in the back of my mind. And then, then I just need to have something that I'm working on. And a lot of times that will change significantly between the germ of the idea and the finished book. But yeah, it really, really helps. And it helps the jitters of a book coming out to have something else that you're, at least in the process of thinking about. So, yeah.
So who was the easiest character to write in this book? Who was your easiest one?
The easiest one was probably Luke, who is, he is an actor, and he has sort of, I guess, he has an intimate connection to Camille's family, and it's a friendship, and I wanted to do like a male female friendship, but it's a really, there's an obsession on Camille's part because of his connection. But he's just, to me, he just is like a good person, so it was just, he was the easiest one for me to write. Camille was hard and easy. I mean, she was interesting to write, but I come away from it like kind of tied up in knots,
Yeah. I figure she could go either way. It's because you're sympathizing with her, or what are you doing? Or you're really taking yourself down a dark path of what to do. So
exactly. But Luke is a nice guy.
Yeah, totally nice guy. And plays such a good role. We won't say more. So was this always the title? Was it always The Collective?
Yes. Well, yes. I took me a long time it was Untitled Alison Gaylin book for a really long time.
Right.
But and we're coming up with, my agent and editor and and everybody, we were all kind of throwing ideas out there. But I think, this was mine, because I realized in the book, I was repeating the phrase, the collective, a lot. And I'm like, and it is a collective. So I really liked it. My agent really liked it. My US editor liked it. And then it took a little convincing to get my British editor to go for it too. I guess it's just not as common a phrase in the UK or something. Yeah. So, but I like the title. So I really wanted to do it.
And I love the stance on the women. Like we know that there's a collection of women. That's basically what we can see. They look like there's some version of they're going to go out and vendetta something, but just by the way they're standing, like they're not standing with arms around each other, which really shows the solo role that they each play in this book. It's a group, but they each have their solo tasks of what to do. This is my takeaway. And there's one person who's really overpowering these other people. That's what I'm seeing on the cover. Yeah. Did you love this cover analysis? I mean, really, it's like we're in the
True. And she's got a gun, that one too.
Exactly. She's got the gun.
The obvious weapon in her hand, but yeah, exactly.
She's got the other, this one's kind of like crossing her arms, like, da-da-da. But it's somebody, you get the real sense of what's going on. So
good. I'm glad, because that was really the idea. I mean, we went through a lot of ideas about the cover too. Right. And I thought it was really important, and so did my editor, to have them in silhouette and not look like they were together, or a group that was together, because they're not, they are, but they're not. So it's hard to kind of depict that. And also the silhouette makes them look more anonymous, rather than women that you can actually see. So,
and even if there's not grass down here, it's like they're walking on like blackened earth, like scorched earth I was getting the feeling of like what they're doing. So there's like really deep into the cover. There you go.
Yes.
And
That's
it goes,
true.
no killer goes unpunished. So there we've got, folks, no killer goes unpunished. This is a GARC. I forgot to ask them to send me the hardcover. So I'm like, I've got 2 ARCs here. So
right.
here we go.
But that's on the hardcover. That tagline's on the hardcover, and that the publishing HarperCollins came up with that. I really love that tagline.
Yeah, it's a really good line. Really good line. So Vivian Lehaney narrates the audio. Did you have a hand in selecting her?
Yes, I did. They always give me the like 5 finalists for who they want, and Vivian Lehaney was my first choice. I thought her acting was so good, and because this book is all first person present tense, it's almost like a big monologue in a way. So I really wanted somebody someone who sounded mature, because Camille's not young, she's not, I wanted somebody that sort of had that, like she'd been through a lot, that she was able to add that quality, and a lot of variance in her voice. And I thought they were all good, but I really liked Vivian Lehaney the most. So I was excited that she was available.
So do you listen to audiobooks? Is that something you enjoy, or do you not have time?
When I used to commute in my car a lot to work, I did. I haven't lately. A lot of my friends listen to audiobooks all the time. I cannot listen to my own audiobooks.
I was going to ask you.
I can't at all. I was like so excited when my book started being done in audio, and I made it through like 2 minutes of one, because I just hearing your own words recited back at you, even by a wonderful actor, is kind of horrifying. But I like the concept of audiobooks, and if I had more commuting to do, I would do it.
It's really interesting. The audiobook you writes used to be like selling your rights to Finland. Like it wasn't a big deal. And now it's a huge deal because so many people are listening to audio, and that is, the format that they're interested in. I also say that people will say, I start hearing it and like, what did I write? Like, why did I write that? No, can I please rewrite? Can I please do that over?
Yes. Or you hear like repeated words and things. It's like, who wants that? It's in print. Well, it's like somebody telling me about, typos or something. I guess now you can correct it in the electronic version. So that's good, but yeah, it's like, don't tell me.
I don't need to hear this.
It's done. It's out of here.
Well, it was interesting about the audiobooks because a couple of authors have told us, and we've talked about this over about the last year and a half, they read their books aloud. And if you do, you hear cadence, you hear repeated words. And if you just spend the day reading the book, it's because the audio is such an important part of the experience, they've taken to doing that. And I had not thought about that before, but they said, all of a sudden you realize and it's reading it, you'll read over the word, but saying it, and you have to sit there and say every word that's on the page, which is really hard to do. And as a result, they said, you'll hear it that you said the same thing way too many times. And unless you do that, and I thought that was interesting. And I don't think it really started happening till audio burgeoned. And all of a sudden people were like, wait a second, what did I do?
Yeah, because it becomes this whole other thing that you're not just writing a book that's on the page, but being
performed.
I guess I should do that.
You just have read aloud and then sit there and go, oh my gosh, what did I do? What did I do? What did I do?
Like torture enough.
So speaking of which, what's next for you? Because I figure you had an idea somewhere along the way,
Yes, it's it's still, still working with it, but it's the working title is The Target, and it's about a woman who is, pretty normal woman who sort of and a mother who becomes the target of an online sort of smear campaign tying her to a decades-old murder. So yeah, and it's like, is it gaslighting, or maybe she did do it? So that's kind of what it is.
to these women, we don't trust the women around you. When
Yeah.
she gets together to watch The Bachelor, folks, she's not really sure who you are. You sign by number or what, you know?
Right.
You get the rose with her, you're not sure what that really means, you know?
Exactly.
It would not be quite the
Does she
same
deserve
watching
your
this.
final rose? No.
This is not quite the same watching The Bachelor with Alison Gaylin, not at all, because she could rewrite that script in 2 seconds and take a nap, you know? There you go. There you go.
Exactly.
Well, I have to tell you, this was a really dark book, but I completely enjoyed it. And that ending totally had me. And I love it when I don't see something coming, but it works. Like, it's not like I didn't see it coming and I was like, I don't know. It didn't start coming and go, whoa, that was good. So
Oh, thank you so much, Carol. That really means a lot to me. I'm so glad that you.
yeah, I heard you talk about this in a preview and I was like, this is one I've got to check out. I've got to figure out what these people are doing. And it's like, whoa, I tell you, I'm looking at people in the supermarket a little differently recently.
Yeah.
It's like,
Why
okay,
are you buying that?
like, what are they really doing with that meat? Like, are they really
Yeah.
buying meat? Are they throwing it at something? Like, you know, what's going
Right.
to happen? And, you know,
Yeah,
these,
there's a secret reason behind that meat. What's going on?
what's going on? Yeah, and you're sitting there also thinking, like, during the pandemic, who are these people hatching at their homes? Like,
Yeah.
okay, now they can't leave. What are they doing? How are they really doing it? These women of the night, you know?
Yes,
So,
exactly.
well, thank you so much for joining us and for giving us such a terrific, creepy read, everybody, because it'll make you think about, ooh, if something happened to me, how far would I go? And I dare you, because you will be thinking about it.
Thank you so much, Carol.
And to our readers, look forward to seeing you next time on Book Reporter Talks To.